I am very delighted to be here with you today and to ask my panelists to join me. You are in for a treat. This morning, Michael Crow urged us all to gather data to help decision makers make important decisions in this space. And of course, Manu encouraged us to stop whining and start thinking about solutions. And so what we want to talk about today is what we're doing here at ASU to do just that, to gather data to help inform our decision makers, but also to come up with real solutions to significant problems here in Arizona. So with that, I'd like to introduce my incredible panel. I have Dave White, Kathryn Sorenson, Cora and Enrique Vivoni. And what I'm going to start out by doing is just asking each person to briefly describe their role at ASU, their role on the water initiative, and so that's how we'll kind of start off. Dave, I'm going to start with you.
Excellent. Thank you, Kelly. I want to start by saying Happy World Water Day. It's really an admirable and a wonderful thing to spend your career focusing on improving the lives of people and nature by focusing on securing water supply. So it's a day also to celebrate for us. I want to say congratulations and welcome to Manu Lal, and congratulations on the launch of the Water Institute at ASU. This is really the culmination of several decades of work that has been going on by amazing colleagues and friends here at ASU. And so we're just delighted to have Manu join us this year, and also want to recognize our colleague Jay Famlietti, who joined us last year, who is the science director for the Arizona Water Innovation Initiative. And just with the addition of these two esteemed scholars that bring remarkable new capacity to our team, which we have over 150 faculty working at ASU in water across engineering, the humanities, the social sciences, physical sciences. So it's really just a joy to see this enterprise that we've built continue to grow. I want to recognize one of my mentors and colleagues, Pat Gober, who's here in the audience, who helped build a lot of the infrastructure and build the teams that have brought us to this point today. As Kelly mentioned, we're going to focus a lot on the development of solutions. And so we'll skip over all of the context that has been described by many of our colleagues, including Dennis and others, who sort of set the stage for why we need to focus on solutions and why here at ASU and why Arizona. I want to make the point that, as was illustrated in our opening video, people in this region for millennia have been innovators and have been developing resilience to water scarce environments and have been thriving in water scarce environments. So if you look back at the Acamel Otham, the Pipash people, the Huhukam, the ancestors of the contemporary tribal communities, including the Gila River Indian community, the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community, these are water innovators who have provided us inspiration and lessons that we can not only take inspiration from their indigenous knowledge and cultures, but work with the contemporary tribal communities today who continue to show up as water leaders. And so this moment today really shows us that we have a lot to learn from the past. We have a lot of innovation that we can lead forward from today. And then what we're going to hear from my colleagues here is what we're doing with the Arizona Water Innovation Initiative. And just briefly to set the stage for this conversation, we're focusing on a couple of priorities. One is to dramatically improve efficiency across all sectors, and we're doing that in a variety of ways, but through technology, but also through behavioral and policy instruments. So we'll hear a little bit about improving water efficiency. We'll hear about revolutionizing water monitoring, water prediction, and water modeling, and providing those insights to decision makers. We'll hear about how we are trying to measurably enhance water security, particularly in Arizona's most water insecure households. And so Amber Woodich is leading that. You heard from our colleague Wendy Jepson about the importance of water security. We'll hear about catalyzing community understanding, community capacity building, and community engagement in water decision making. We'll hear about building consensus for sound water stewardship and providing policy advice and policy analysis. And we'll also hear about how we are convening and providing evidence-based dialogue to inform deliberation about different policy considerations that are in the discourse in Arizona. And so those are just some of the areas where we're working through the Arizona Water Innovation Initiative, which is coordinating and now sort of working under the auspices of the broader Water Institute at ASU. So Kelly, those are some of the things that we're doing, and I think we're going to hear from our colleagues here about the details about those priorities.
We are, and that was an excellent introduction. Could you also share your role in the Water Initiative and provide a little bit of background, since we're just doing the initial introductions?
22-year Sun Devil, and I serve as the Associate Vice President for Research at Arizona State University and Director of our Global Institute of Sustainability and Innovation, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Principal Investigator for the Arizona Water Innovation Initiative, which was launched just over a year ago. We're about to release our one-year impact report, so we'll share that out with everyone who participates here today. And that initiative was inspired and launched by an investment from the state of Arizona, which provided a $40 million investment to stand up this effort, which is designed really to provide measurable impacts through actionable science, research and development, use-inspired science that's designed to be relevant, timely, credible, and legitimate to support not only our public sector actors like Arizona Department of Water Resources, Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, but our private sector partners like Intel and TSMC, who are leading the United States in our reinvigoration of microchip manufacturing here. Nonprofit partners such as the Babbitt Center for Water Policy, which is here today, I know, and municipal coalitions like the Arizona Municipal Water Users Association, which I know folks are here as well. So through partnerships, our theory of change is that the knowledge, the research, the technology, and development that we do at the university can be implemented through critical partnerships with public, private, and NGO sector partners to change, the outcomes, to actually pull levers to increase water resilience and security for the state.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Kathryn, could you hand the mic over to Kat? Oh, Kathryn has her own mic. Everybody has their own mic. That's great. Yes. Kathryn, do you want to introduce yourself? Talk about your role in the initiative?
Thank you, and thank you for including me. My name is Kathryn Sorenson. I am the Director of Research at the Kyle Center for Water Policy. We'll talk a little bit more about what that is and our role at AWII. But I also had the privilege of serving as the Director of Phoenix Water Services for several years, and before that, as the Director of the City of Mesa's Water and Wastewater Utilities as well. And so I hope one of the things I bring to the AWII is the perspective of those who actually have to be out in the field using the technologies that people come up with, using the policies that you guys think up in your papers, and really making these things happen on the ground such that people have safe, clean water at the tap. And so I hope that's a role that I can play here at AWII, among others.
Terrific. Really important. Cora, you're new to the team. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. My name is Cora. I'm originally from northeastern Arizona. I was born and raised on the Navajo Reservation, and that's the tribe that I'm enrolled in. I'm also a graduate of ASU from the Honors College at the undergraduate level, as well as from the law school here in the Indian Legal Program. So my background is in Indian law and water law, and I previously worked for a few environmental NGOs, as well as the Navajo Nation Department of Justice in the Water Rights Unit, so working to secure and protect the nation's water rights in all three states, Utah, New Mexico, and Arizona, and previously worked at Western Resource Advocates in their Western Lands program as their attorney, and now get the privilege of working with everyone here, but most notably within the Kyle Center as a senior research fellow. And my specialty, of course, is going to be building out tribal water policy research for the center, but also making sure that we are connecting with our 22 sovereign nations here within the state for the initiative.
Terrific. Thank you, Cora. Enrique, can you talk a little bit about your role in the initiative?
Good morning, everyone. How are you? My name is Enrique Vivoni. I'm a professor in our School of Engineering. I'm a hydrologist by training. This room is full of hydrologists. It's full of hydrology all-stars, young and old, mid-career. I like to think of myself as a connector of generations of hydrologists. So if you're young and you want to connect with the older hydrologists in the room, come my way. I'll make the introduction. I'm very pleased to be on this panel today. I'm very pleased to be here with the Arizona Water Innovation Initiative. We have a lot of work to do, and hopefully this panel will help us let you know a little bit about our current work and our plans.
Terrific. Thanks, Enrique. Dave, I'm going to turn back to you. You did provide a nice overview in your introduction about what the initiative is doing. You mentioned that we have completed our first year sprint. So I want to ask if you might just talk a little bit about some of the outcomes we've seen and what you might expect to see at the conclusion of the initiative.
Yeah, certainly. And so we have completed what we called a one-year innovation sprint. We launched the initiative in this room just over a year ago. In that time, we've really built a remarkable network, as I mentioned, of both the ASU folks, also partners with our other state universities, so University of Arizona, Northern Arizona University, as well as a broad, as Manu has described, this broad coalition of university partners. We're partnering with non-governmental organizations like RCAP and others. What we're really focused on is identifying these critical key outcomes for water resilience and water security in the state of Arizona. So translating the research and innovation into, let's give an example. The city of Phoenix, where Kathryn previously served as the Water Services Director, and I had the privilege of serving as the chair of her Policy Advisory Committee, the city is now focused on developing advanced water purification as the next generation of water reuse and water recycling technology and management in the state of Arizona. Again, this is a place where innovation has been ongoing for thousands of years, and especially in the last 40 years. Central Arizona region currently reuses more than 90% of the water, municipal wastewater that we produce. We are now developing both the technology and the policy to be able to use advanced water purification for direct potable reuse of recycled municipal wastewater. We work directly with the city of Phoenix as well as with the Department of Environmental Quality to make that happen. Right? Because these solutions, when you talk about developing advanced water purification, this is a solution that's a technology solution, it's a policy solution, it requires behavioral change, it requires public engagement. So our teams have been working across all of those dimensions, for example, advising the Department of Environmental Quality on how to rewrite the state regulations to allow and encourage advanced water purification, working with the city on helping them to structure the financing and the management strategy to implement that, working with a variety of different communities, including Dr. Jepson talked about how historically certain communities that have been overburdened and underserved, including racial groups like African Americans and Latinos and Latinx communities, historically are mistrusting of water providers and more likely to use bottled water and less likely to trust municipal water services. So we've been working and engaging those communities specifically to increase uptake. So it's this integrated approach, using one example of water purification, that our team is trying to support these transitions to more resilient water systems in the state of Arizona.
Terrific. Thank you. Kathryn, one of the objectives that David talked about for the initiative is to build consensus on sound water stewardship. And our state is probably not unlike many other states in that we have a fairly polarized political situation here. Talk with me a little bit about how you utilize the data to move through and to get results in this kind of atmosphere, political atmosphere.
Sure, but let me first say that when I asked Dave to serve on the City of Phoenix's Water and Wastewater Rate Advisory Committee as payback for when he asked me to serve on his External Advisory Committee for Decision Center for a Desert City. So, and he served very admirably. So let me give you an example. Actually, let me step back and say consensus is always really hard. Water policy and management is very difficult. I believe people have the best of intentions. Everyone does, because I firmly believe you cannot find a human on this planet who doesn't want other humans to have access to safe, clean, reliable water services. The difficulty comes in the implementation. There's economic, political, cultural, religious, all sorts of historic, all sorts of difficulties to overcome. What we've really focused on at the Kyle Center is doing our best, perhaps not always succeeding, but doing our best to present information that has context and that is objective and neutral. Knowing that one of the best roles that we can play is putting that out there so that those who have to make the decisions on the ground and have to go about the hard work of implementation have the tools to do so. An example of that is that coming into the Kyle Center and about 3 years ago, and knowing that Colorado River shortage was imminent, I also knew that there really was not a good model of how Colorado River shortage would actually play out in central Arizona. There were known legal priorities of water, but entities who have those priorities of water exchange those priorities, they lease those priorities, they enter into all sorts of arrangements that are quite complicated. And so at the end of the day, there really wasn't a guidepost for a water manager to go to say, okay, but what does that mean for me? What happens to my community? How much Colorado River water can I expect to receive when there isn't enough to go around? And so we went about building that model and partnering with the Decision Theater, with AWII, to put that information out there. Not with a lot of monologue, not with a lot of opinion, but just here's some results that might be useful to you in your community, and parsing through that. So I think that's one example.
Sure.
But one of the other things that we are always very careful to do at the Kyle Center is involve advisory committees, involve those who are actually on the ground, so that they can always help guide us, so that we can make sure the information that we're producing is relevant and useful and has the correct context as well.
Terrific. And Kathryn, for those of us, or for those of people who are online who aren't familiar perhaps with the Kyle Center, could you just take a minute and describe what it is?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So the Kyle Center really focuses on Western water policy and management, but on the Colorado River and Arizona in particular. Sarah Porter serves as our director. We produce what we hope is neutral but helpful information that has historical context. And I think it's those two things are really important to pair. Because facts without context are potentially even misleading at times.
Right.
Because there is a context to everything that happens. There's a history and a culture to everything that happens in water. And so I think it's the pairing of those two things that makes us valuable.
Great. Thank you. That's super helpful. Cora, one of the Water Initiative goals is to catalyze community understanding, engagement, and capacity. And we've talked about the fact that you're new to the center and new to the initiative, but you probably have really big goals for how you're going to mobilize and include the tribal entities. Can you talk a little bit about that for us?
Yeah, definitely, and thank you so much for the question. I think first and foremost, my two top priorities for this role is to provide access and to build partnerships with tribal nations within the state. I think it's important that our role as a university institution is not taking place of tribal voices within these water policy discussions, but informing their decisions. And I think the way that we can do that as experts in our fields and researchers is providing, as Kathryn mentioned, neutral sources of information that they can build upon, but also very informed bodies of research that can help create sustainable solutions. And I think at the forefront, our collective goal is to create those sustainable solutions, but we cannot do that without inclusion of the 22 nations that have sustained this land and these waters since time immemorial. And so a lot of my work will be focused on looking at pockets of research where tribal attorneys or water managers or hydrologists don't have the capacity to do so. In my former role at DOJ, it was my boss and I trying to advocate for the nation in 3 different states. And so thinking about how we can generate the next new generation of attorneys or water managers and building tribal capacity in that way is one goal that we have. And so thinking about ways that we can do that within the university, maybe offering different courses or partnering with students and hopefully within the communities that they are from and working on water solutions that they can go back home and implement in partnership with their tribal nation is something that I think would be a unique goal that we can accomplish. Sure. But also, I'm really excited to be able to work on research that puts into context a lot of the water policies that we see throughout the state. So I hear all the time of how we try to adapt solutions to tribal nations, and I think that model has shown us that we're creating different projects or scenarios that are then that we then have to model into tribal communities, and sometimes that just does not fit because we're not including tribal communities from the beginning. And so I think what's really innovative about the initiative and something I'm very privileged to work on a day-to-day basis is making sure that we go out to the tribes. And so a very specific goal of mine is to have that individual relationship and outreach to all 22 nations to understand their water needs and whether or not they want to partner in an effort to protect and promote their tribal sovereignty as self-governing bodies, but really being able to let them know that there are people who want to help and who have expertise and capabilities to do so within the state. And as far as outside of tribal communities, I think there's incredible opportunity to build partnerships with the broader public of sharing information about tribal water policy and law so folks can understand the nuances of how difficult but also how not difficult it is to work within tribal water communities. And you think back 60 years from this year, 60 years ago, was our first tribal water settlement within the state. So the first 4 tribes have had their water rights settled in Arizona v. California. 101 years ago, the Colorado River Compact was signed, and the water of the Colorado River was managed without tribes for 40 years. And 100 years ago, I, as a Native American, became a citizen of this nation. So thinking about all these different federal policies and state policies and how they impact tribes is super important to understand how we build solutions for the future and how we build in equity. And also, I think understanding at the forefront of this conversation is that we have a role, as everybody does, in protecting tribal sovereignty and making sure that we do not diminish that, but honor that in a way that is better than the generations that we have had before us. So,
sure, really important.
That's
context.
a lot, but I hope I answered the question.
Small job. You'll get right to it. Enrique, one of the goals that Dave mentioned for the Arizona Water Innovation Initiative is revolutionizing water measurement, modeling, and prediction. Revolutionizing. And you, my friend, are responsible for that area. So can you talk
a strong word.
Yeah, it is a strong word. So can you talk with us a little bit about what you're doing in that space?
Sure. Let me first start by saying we've built a great team. You're seeing members of the team here on the panel. There's members of the team here in your audience. The team that's working on the quote-unquote revolutionary part of the initiative is a group of graduate students, postdoctoral scholars, faculty members, researchers within our Center for Hydrologic Innovations. This center was launched almost a year ago, maybe slightly more than a year ago, along with the Arizona Water Innovation Initiative. It comes from a desire to do water resources for public impact, to take technological advancements and co-develop them in a collaborative way with those that ultimately will use them. Now, where does this come from? Well, it comes from a career of frustration in which one and many others in our field build tools that are not used or do analyses that are never consumed in a way that affects decision-making or policy. So that's the impetus. That's a bit of the background. Another thing has happened, which is a revolution in technology, where we can actually build things that are useful and get it into individuals' hands or into the hands of water managers easily. The last 20 years have been remarkable in terms of technological innovations in the IT area, information technologies. So what we're trying to do is pair up the assets that exist with the need that has arisen and has always been there. The need being better water management decisions, faster, better decisions. And the assets being the great people that we've assembled and obviously the tools that they build and the tools that others have built. So what does this revolutionary system looks like? We're sitting in it. Right? This is infrastructure that allows us to view information. Now, these screens for today's panel and for today's workshop are static, but they're fully dynamic if you so build them to be. And we've made decisions without data for a long time. The Colorado River Compact was a decision where data was ignored for the most part. When the evidence was there, that cup that was shown earlier showed it was half full. It was stated to be full. 18 million acre feet, I don't think has ever flown or gone through that particular stretch of the river. So we want to leverage this that's above our heads with dynamic data that are collected from different platforms. There's been so much progress on the ground sensors. It was been mentioned a couple times today. Internet of Things, sensors that are connected to each other to transmit their data real time. So we're viewing our watersheds here in our state and regionally and globally already from ground stations. And then we got the bird's eye view from satellite remote sensing of various types. So we want to integrate those. And then we have people that over careers have been building models of hydrological systems, whether they're the models of the distribution of water inside a city or they're models of how the global hydrological cycle works. We need to bring those three pieces that I've described together in places like this so that we have some facts to base our decisions on and we can discuss based on the science or the latest science that's available. So that's our goal, to build a platform, and in building so, revolutionize how we do this going forward. And the platform is just a way of integrating the knowledge that we already have. We are not very good at harnessing collective knowledge or collective action. And so this type of technology is intended to do that harnessing for us and with us.
Okay. Can you share any outcomes you've had so far? I know the first year was in fact a sprint. Did you have any outcomes that you'd like to share?
We have some very good examples of work that's going on. Now, all these projects take time. And I'll give you a few examples. We've built a team, and this team is university investigators that I've described in the center, but the team is also composed of or consisting of those that will use the technology. And we also have to partner with folks that are much better than us in building technologies, because in the end, we're hydrologists, or we're social scientists, or we're lawyers. And there is ample to learn from folks that are in the software engineering and the IT realm. So here's an example. There's a need in the Western US to control, suppress, manage wildfire. It's wreaking havoc in California and Oregon and Arizona. And these wildfire disasters have enormous economic costs and costs of lives and social impacts. Well, there's also a relationship between the forests that spread and are the places of those wildfires and the water balance or the water fluxes in those forests. So we've partnered with our local water agency, Power and Water Agency, Salt River Project, to try to provide intelligence, to try to provide tools that will help them to understand what are the benefits of some of the forest restoration activities that they're going to do and are doing for the benefit of reducing wildfire. The question to a technical group like this is, how many acre feet of water will be available if a forest restoration plan is implemented of these many acres? Well, some of us say, wow, wait, what a question. I actually have to give you a number at the end that's going to be used for policymaking? That's the type of project that this entire initiative in the Water Institute is aspiring to solve, participate in. And so how do we get that number? There's 1,000 simple ways of getting that number. Most of them are probably wrong. And there's more complex ways of getting that number. Some of them are also wrong. But the numerical models that exist today for forests and the hydrology of forests allow us to pinpoint the effect of individual tree removals that are planned through a forestry plan that respects habitat, that respects cultural resources. I'm not talking large-scale logging, okay? I'm talking something that's done with the ecology of the system in mind and has a benefit, a water benefit, that can be quantified after plucking that tree from a numerical model. The numerical model has the hydrological processes that one would expect in a snow-driven ecosystem. Now imagine if we were in this room viewing the landscape of a project site and the forestry professionals already had identified the trees that would be plucked and the hydrological models being run, and we might decide in the middle of the run, wait, let's not pluck that many number of trees. That's a little excessive, don't you think? Okay, so let's pluck 20% of the original number and run the hydrological model and view the acre feet change or water availability. We would call that augmentation in some circles due to the activity of the forest treatment. And that activity, of course, has a cost. So we're doing a cost-benefit analysis in real time, and there are trade-offs. So we're placing the hydrological problem in a much bigger sphere, trade-offs including ecosystem trade-offs, human settlement trade-offs, cultural resource trade-offs. So I give that as an example.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Of things that we're doing in this first year that are very far along.
Terrific. Kathryn?
Can I add to that just really
Sure,
quickly?
of course.
Because I think that's so important. I can tell you from experience that those who are out implementing policy, you got to work with the information you have on the fly, and it is what it is. And so being able to create those models ahead of time and have that information ready is so important and really encapsulates the power of AWII. One of my favorite days here working with the AWII and the Kyle Center for Water Policy was after we'd gone through all this work to create this shortage impact model and visualize it and through the decision theater and do all these great things. Several cities called me up and said, hey, I heard you have this model, and I really need to know what the results are from my community so that I can begin to plan. I think that's what we can bring to the table, are these models that are very well thought out, based on fact, have context, and provide this information in real time for those who are out there doing the hard work.
Who need it. Absolutely.
Who need it.
Yeah, and so I just want to comment on this as the promise of what we're trying to do, because working with the science teams like Enrique's team and Jay's team, who in addition to the work that Enrique is describing brings understanding of groundwater and other water resources from space at increasingly finer and finer resolution. So we have this important actionable knowledge. Then we have Professor Clara Lauer, who's our user experience architect, working to try to understand how can we take the knowledge that Enrique and Jay and others are generating and make that usable, understandable, designing different types of interfaces that are human-centered. We have now Cora to be able to, in the example that Enrique gives, a big portion of the Salt River Project watershed is on tribal nation lands, right? So how do we now do a more effective job of integrating tribal perspectives into the development of these tools, which has been a historical limitation of the work that we've done at ASU. So bringing Cora into the team really helps us to address that concern. Then we have folks like Susan Craig, who leads our Impact Water Arizona program, to then be out working with communities, right? So that as Sarah and Kathryn and others are working with the policy and decision-making community, Susan and her team can be working with members in the community to help empower them and help them to understand the implications of possible forest thinning on a project. So again, if you think about it in this sort of integrative way, I mean, that's the promise of what we can do. It's also the challenge. It's also why this is really, really, really difficult to do in this transdisciplinary kind of environment. Right. But that's why we're also committed to this effort.
Terrific. That is a great ending to our panel, I think, Dave. We are very mindful that we are the panel before lunch. And so we'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody in the room has any questions, or we are good to move along to lunch. Yes.
Thanks, Dave. Well, I really admire this initiative, and I think you've got a great combination of people. But I'm struck by everything that I've heard this morning has reflected a certain worldview about water, and there are different worldviews about water. But the West has been, of these states, has been developed on the premise that water is there to be used and exploited and developed by society for its benefit. My experience with First Nations, particularly in Canada, but elsewhere, is that they have quite a different worldview, and water has a cultural and a spiritual value, and in fact, it's interesting that in New Zealand, one of the rivers has been designated to have legal rights as an entity to be protected. So a question for Cora really is, do you see a conflict playing out between the First Nations worldview that I've just explained versus this ethos of development? We haven't had any discussion of ecosystems at all today. I mean, presumably those are of particular importance to your communities, and how do you see the trade-offs between these different perspectives moving forward?
Thank you for your question, and I totally agree. Thinking about the challenge of addressing 22 different perspectives within the state of their each tribe's individual connection to their homelands, to their water, and how their creation stories have that embedded within their identities is super important. And I think it's about defining our role as a university and understanding that with tribal sovereignty, there is also data sovereignty. And so understanding that in the partnership that we are building with tribal communities, that there is some information that we are not privy to or won't have access to. But if there are instances where that information is shared, I think everyone would love to learn and have reverence for that knowledge. And I think it's important to have a space within this growing tribal water policy branch in that we are including that perspective of reverence for the land and for the water and those different ecological perspectives of the river that flows through the Colorado River Basin and all its tributaries throughout the state. But I do want to mention that while each individual tribal nation does have that cultural knowledge and perspective of their water, they also are trying to survive in everyday society, just like we are here in the valley. And there are so many different perspectives on how each tribe wants to develop that water. And I think that's a growing understanding, but also making sure that we are building a place that protects those different perspectives, and oftentimes having competing perspectives within a tribal nation or different tribal nations, and making sure that I think, our role is to provide the best information that we can and help translate data and technology that could help assist in those perspectives, but ultimately realizing that, what the tribal nations want to do with their water is up to them. I hope that answers it, but I really do appreciate the question and hope that we can create that space for that knowledge.
I would also add, though, while we haven't addressed ecosystem services or environmental flows in this panel, and while this particular part of our overall Water Institute and water research at ASU is focused more on the issues as you described them, but we do have colleagues and teams here at ASU, including, for example, our colleagues that work in the long-term ecological research program, who have a very robust water research portfolio that includes a focus on environmental and in-stream flows and other ecosystem services parts. So that's part of the overall story, and I think it's an important question.
Terrific. All right, well, please join me in thanking the panelists. Appreciate it.